piece of Nikola's early technology.
It is the new hot electric vehicle stock, Nikola, roaring higher. It is now up 96%.
Investors are betting big on EV right now.
Trevor Milton, founder and
Trevor
executive
Milton
chairman.
became a billionaire overnight when he took Nikola public back in June of 2020.
Trevor Milton is one of these breakthrough entrepreneurs, and these guys think big.
One of the tasks in life that we have as entrepreneurs is to be able to take risks that no one else thought was possible.
He built something that became a $30 billion company.
With Nikola, I warned you that the stock would spike right out of the gate and then plummet. That's what happened.
Nikola shares are tumbling after a short seller called the company, quote, an intricate fraud built on dozens of lies.
Hindenburg Research, they say the company has made false statements, it has rigged its truck reveals, and it's had misleading demonstrations.
Nikola towed a truck up a hill
and then just let it start rolling
because the truck couldn't run itself.
It was being rolled down a hill. It was in motion.
When the Hindenburg report came out, they had taken pieces of story, spun it to tell their tale.
The trucks worked. I mean, we had driving trucks at the time this came out. It was ridiculous.
Today, we announced charges against Trevor Milton.
It seemed almost as though there was a coordinated effort between Hindenburg dropping their report and the government issuing subpoenas to Nikola at their corporate offices. They were literally one day apart.
Trevor Milton steps down as executive chairman amid an investigation into the company. Nikola has fallen now 35%.
Wire fraud, securities fraud.
Lying to investors.
Can I blame the average American for thinking that Trevor is guilty? Absolutely not. Having been at Nikola from almost the beginning, I knew to the contrary.
The indictment claims that Trevor Milton used his massive social media platform to inflate his company's stock price.
It was difficult for a New York jury to relate to him, a wealthy guy from the West who buys tracts of land larger than the city that they live in. The government did kind of use that to their advantage.
You would think by reading the transcripts that nothing Nikola was doing was real at all.
There's 1,500 employees working on all sorts of various programs. If it was a scam, what were those people working on?
Trevor Milton, the founder and former CEO, will be spending the next 4 years in prison for fraud.
The company has cut all ties with Milton, but the damage is done.
So I just came across this episode of Tucker Carlson's podcast where he had Trevor Milton on. To be completely transparent, I have never heard of Trevor Milton before, nor was I familiar with the whole Nikola situation. Back in 2020, I was just starting to get into investing, so Nikola wasn't even on my radar. I know he's a bit of a controversial figure, but after seeing this whole interview, watching a few videos on him and Nikola, and even watching the documentary he just dropped last month, I had to bring this story to light because this is absolutely wild. For some context, Trevor Milton, born in Layton, Utah, is an American entrepreneur best known for founding Nikola Corporation, a company that aimed to revolutionize the trucking industry with hydrogen and electric vehicles. He had a tough upbringing. He didn't really come from money. He lost his mom at the age of 15. He dropped out of high school. He briefly attended Utah Valley University and then jumped headfirst into entrepreneurship. After a few ventures, he ultimately launched Nikola in 2015. So Trevor's big idea was a hydrogen electric semi-truck. Hydrogen, in theory, could be produced using just water and electricity. So the potential to reduce emissions from heavy-duty trucks was massive. A great idea, a great concept, but a very challenging one. To go public, Nikola used a SPAC. And for those of you who don't know what a SPAC is a publicly traded corporation with a 2-year lifespan formed with the sole purpose of effecting a merger or a combination with a privately held business to enable it to go public. So not your traditional IPO where you're getting help from investment banks acting as underwriters. It's a faster and more flexible alternative for private companies to go public. And after the announcement, Nikola's valuation skyrocketed, going from $3 billion to over $30 billion. Investors were eating this up. That is, until the commercial dropped. Nikola released a promo called Nikola One in Motion. It featured their semi-truck rolling down a highway, but the problem was the truck wasn't running on its own power. It was literally rolled down a hill. Now, was the truck technically in motion? Yes. But was it driving under its own power? No. Now enters Hindenburg Research, an investment research firm and activist short seller. They aimed to expose corporate fraud, often taking short positions to profit from stock prices falling after their reports. They released a report on Nikola, accusing the company, and Trevor specifically, of misleading investors and exaggerating claims about the tech. And it turned out that the founder of Hindenburg, Nate Anderson, was in direct contact with the DOJ about the hit piece on Nikola. The report triggered investigations from both the SEC and DOJ, and of course, any investigation into any company causes a drastic decline in stock price. And just 10 days later, Trevor stepped down as CEO. To some, his exit did seem a little suspicious, but Trevor had actually planned to step down before the company went public. He needed to take care of his wife, who was battling serious health issues, constant dizziness, seizures, and eventually getting type 1 diabetes, all from a doctor who had given her the wrong blood plasma, thinking it was hers. So Trevor had to choose between the company and his family. That's when he ultimately stepped down. And Nikola's new management shifted their direction, which caused the stock price to fall even more, and the narrative quickly turned against Trevor. 10 months later, the Southern District of New York criminally charged Trevor Milton with securities fraud and wire fraud. He went to trial and was found guilty on 3 of 4 counts, but the trial was a complete mess. The prosecution allegedly withheld evidence that could have supported Trevor's case, and the Southern District of New York worked closely with former Nikola executives, so really any evidence that the prosecution received siding with Trevor's innocence was not revealed to the defense. Again, it was just a mess. 14 months later, sentencing began, and Trevor was potentially facing up to 64 years in prison, which is crazy because this decision was on securities and wire fraud, yet people who commit murder serve at least 20 years in prison and then are let back out in society. So just something to think about. Now, what's interesting is that the judge at the sentencing had some common sense. The judge realized that the prosecution was exaggerating their statements, that the trucks weren't real. When he asked the prosecution about it, here was their response. Your Honor, my understanding, and this is largely based on public reporting, is that electric versions of the truck, not hydrogen, those were never ultimately developed, had been sold. Although there have been a number of recalls for various issues, such as battery fires and other seatbelt, I don't know if there are any actually on the road today, because there have been a number of recalls over the past year. Now, you can see the judge's response that follows. The judge questioned the prosecution's logic to the point where he even stepped out of court to compose himself after realizing how weak their arguments were. Ultimately, the judge realized that Trevor was not acting with intent to mislead investors, and he ruled the counts would run concurrently and sentenced Trevor to 48 months in prison. And it gets crazier. New evidence came to light regarding who was on the jury for the trial. Turns out, juror number 6 lied under oath, claiming she wasn't active on social media, yet had posted tweets clearly biased against wealthy individuals. And just to give you an example, she retweeted this on her Twitter, or X. My New Year's resolution: drink more smoothies and abolish the billionaire class. It was also found that the jury did not understand intent was required on all 4 counts. They found him guilty on counts 1, 3, and 4, but they had this notion that intent was only required on count 2, which they acquitted him for. And in an interview with a few of the jurors, they asked if criminal intent was missing in the trial, to which they responded with yes. In the same interview, one juror admitted they rushed the verdict because someone had to be home by 5 p.m. and couldn't return next week. The juror in this interview feared that introducing a new juror would give Milton a chance to possibly leave acquitted on all counts. So just give this a listen.
You just kind of want to describe what those first moments are like, that first hour in that room together.
Oh, we just wanted to get through it, mostly because I knew I couldn't go back. Like I said, I paid for school. I'm in school. I paid for it out of pocket, and my job wasn't gonna pay me after 15 days, and I was already losing money being in jury duty.
Right.
This is who was on my jury, and we're like, this is insane. Like, this can't be real.
I feel bad because I couldn't come back that Monday, so maybe I should just step down, just let them keep deliberating. Yeah, because maybe they had just kept
certainly looked from the outside, which is confirmed from the reporting, that it was a rushed verdict because the jurors just simply wanted to be done.
A man's life is on the line, and the jury rushes the verdict so that someone can make it home for dinner. Unbelievable. Anyways, Trevor was preparing to appeal this year, but then in March, Donald Trump pardoned him. After everything, the fraudulent Hindenburg report, the corruption by prosecution, Trevor Milton is no longer facing life in prison. Now, if you do go watch the documentary, I know you'll probably have some doubts at first. You'll probably think he exaggerated the company's progress or misled investors, but everything he was saying was transparent. Investors pre-IPO knew what they were investing in, or at least I'd hope they knew, throwing millions of dollars into a company that was pre-production, pre-sales, pre-revenue. And that's what kind of gets me, and this is what I'll finish on. In the documentary, early investor in Nikola, Jimmy Rex, talks about putting $500,000 up for investment after seeing a picture of the truck at a client appreciation party. At one point, he says he was up $15 to $20 million, a 30x return. Now, Trevor claims that Jimmy ultimately walked away with $5 million, so still a 10x, but Jimmy seems bitter. He thinks Trevor talked too much as a CEO, and that's what led to his downfall. He believed that people like Trevor deserved to be punished. Personally, I think Jimmy's just mad he didn't sell at a higher price. You know, he was up 30x and didn't lock in profits till he fell down to a 10x or $5 million here. And that's completely on him. It just seems like he's blaming Trevor when he himself did not have enough discipline to sell at least a portion of his bag at a higher price. So there's no crying at the casino, and Jimmy just needs to realize that. But yeah, there's a lot more that Trevor touches on in the podcast with Tucker Carlson. So I recommend giving that a listen, or at the very least, you should go watch this documentary. It's right here on YouTube called Conviction versus Corruption, the Trevor Milton Saga. Just a really interesting story to hear. So that's all I've got. Go give that documentary a watch. Again, I don't know shit about fuck, but let me know what you guys think about the whole thing. And yeah, you guys take care.